Welcome back to the Fresh Rental, where we sit down with the people shaping the future of rental.
Today we've got Foster Harris, Director of Rental and Trucking at TriLift Industries out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Foster's been leading rental and trucking operations for almost 2 years now, and before that spent nearly a decade at Sunstate Equipment building teams, managing branches, and driving growth.
We're diving into what it's really like running rental operations in the commercial and the residential equipment space, the operations side, the people side, and what it takes to build something reliable. So, with that, welcome, Foster.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here, Foster. To start with, we always like to start with how you got here. You spent 8 years at Sunshine before moving over to TriLift. Walk us through how you got in the rental business in the first place.
I got out of the military. I was managing at a Lowe's and putting myself through college. After that, I had a chance at leadership in the Navy, and that's really where I felt at home.
Nice.
So I joined a company called Ferguson Enterprises in their manager training program, and it became clear after about 2 years that I was going to get stuck behind a commercial desk, and they weren't going to give me that chance to lead.
hmm
So, one day I was kind of venting to a friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, you should check out the rental space. It's the perfect area for you." So he got me a interview over at Sun State Equipment, and the rest is history. I came on board with Sun State Equipment as a manager in training. They kind of fast tracked that for me. 6 months later, I got my first branch, which was in Yucaipa, California.
Nice.
6 months after that, they said, "This branch is too small for you." They gave me one of the largest branches in LA, and I turned that one around. And then I heard they had an opportunity opening up in North Carolina. So I volunteered for that, flew out to Atlanta, interviewed with a gentleman named Tom Teisel, who is a legend in the rental industry.
Yeah.
And he gave me an opportunity and taught me, just what it means to lead in the rental industry. It's kind of history.
That's awesome. And actually, it's funny because I've talked with a bunch of people in rental, and most of them didn't see like a career path in rental. It just came to them like by chance, like by a referral, by someone that like called you up and is like, "Hey, you might be good for this." So what do you think about
Very
that?
similar story, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that, Foster. Yep, I had a very similar story, so it's nice to hear.
Hmm.
Awesome. And I mean, now that we're talking about Sunstate, you came up through branch management, right? So, what was that experience like, and what did it teach you about like running the actual rental operation?
Man, I think the biggest takeaway is, as you hit rental, we all know it gets chaotic.
hmm
And so I think the biggest takeaway is to be proactive, make a plan, and be ready for the bowling ball to come break it and having to piece everything back together. I mean, I think that's the resilience that you get in the rental industry is that, you want to make sure you're proactive. You want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, but you have to be prepared for everything to fall apart and be able to
Yeah.
react to that.
So you have to be like a good problem solver in this industry, huh?
Absolutely.
At times, it seems like that's all it is just having to solve problems and put out fires.
Absolutely.
All right, so talking about the difference between managing a branch and then now directing rental and trucking for an entire company, what do you say the biggest differences, noticeable differences you see between the two?
I'd say that the biggest difference is the scale, right? When you're running a branch, you're kind of following somebody else's vision. And when you get to the point where you're over over rental for the entire company, now all of a sudden you are the one creating the vision with leadership. And I think that's the biggest difference is the difference between aligning with somebody else's vision and making the vision yourself.
And
It's
now,
nice when you can actually do
yeah,
that.
yeah, when you can actually do like make people follow your vision, right? And just have that influence, right? So that's pretty cool. And now let's talk a little about Trifleet. Like, what made you make the move over there? Was it exactly this or something else?
It all kind of was serendipitous. Like everything happened for a reason. There was some disagreements with leadership at Sun State, and this opportunity appeared at almost the identical timing. I sat down with leadership. I listened to their values, their mission, and we really aligned and saw the company going in the same direction. They were looking for a rental leader to come into their dealership and kind of change the directory of the company to a more rental focused dealership, right? And it sounded like a intriguing challenge, and we took up the reins, and here we go.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it. So walk us through a little bit of the challenge that you go to operationally day to day now. What's the fleet size look like? What's the team structure? And what kind of customers are you serving day to day?
So, I mean, there's a little bit of a change in the customers that we're serving. We're much more commercial and industrial on this side when you're dealing with material handling. Where before at Sun State, there was a lot more residential customer focus. I mean, it wasn't a ton of it, but there was more there, more walk-in customers, more of that accessibility. Here at TriLift, we've got a fleet of about 300 units, different sizes of forklifts and material handling equipment, as well as some scissor lifts and boom lifts, mostly slab type. So
Gotcha.
with that, it just kind of changes it a little bit. We're kind of focusing on large forklifts as kind of a specialty. So we're jumping into stuff as big as 36,000 pound pneumatics. We've got 35,000 pound cushion trucks, and just trying to open up that segment as well.
Awesome. And I mean, right now you're overseeing both rental and trucking, right? So how do those two sides of the business interact, and where do they create challenges like for each other, or if they do, you know?
I would say that because of how intertwined the two are, that there's not really a push against one another. Because in order for you to make a rental, you have to get it delivered.
Yeah.
In order for you to have something to deliver, it's this. I would say the only time that there's really maybe a problem that runs in there is other dealership needs that have to be interwoven into the trucking side. So we're delivering new trucks. We're going to pick up trucks for the service department. Up until recently, we used it as kind of just a break-even department. And now we're kind of transitioning that into a profit center.
Nice.
Perfect. So I guess is that the main bottleneck you have in the business that slows things down, or what are some operational challenges, I guess, at the scale you're at right now when things get busy?
Honestly, the biggest bottleneck we have is technology. I mean, we see everybody coming out with technologies and this and that. Here at TriLift, we run off of an old system, right? That's set up for a dealership. It's not set up for rental.
Got it.
So we're in talks with DIS. I think they're coming out with a new software that kind of integrates with DIS. Integrates with NDS. I'm sorry, too many acronyms all at once. And be able to allow us to pull out the information that's pertinent to rental, which currently
Gotcha.
it does not. Like there's some shortfalls with that. Like if I look in the system, it won't tell me whether or not a unit's actually on rent,
Oh,
or it'll let me rent it if there's a work order open. So there's some downfalls in there that take some manual, a little more hands-on manual figuring out, I guess is the best way to put it.
I don't know if Jamie's too involved with any of that, but I can tell you that I also have those technological challenges, and when you find the right system and you find something that works for you, it's nice. There's still all little bugs to work out, but yeah, there's that manual lifting is not fun when you have to keep going back to the drawing board of how do I actually use this product. So
exactly.
yeah, I don't know if Jamie knows anything about
Oh man,
that.
you came right up my alley, man. Actually, yeah, that's been like the driver for the sales we've had, especially like with the dealerships. Because I don't want to talk about any specific names or whatever, but these legacy systems, I mean, normally have like a little rental branch that doesn't operate how it needs to. And that's where we come in, and we actually do rental with a sales part. So we're more focused on rental, So that's like the biggest driver we've had, and a bunch of people resonate with what you're saying. Like when you rebook something that's already been put up for rent, or you don't have the tracking for those pieces of equipment, or you don't know where your things are, that sort of thing is what we do. And I completely resonate with that. So yeah, that's a huge bottleneck for a bunch of companies.
Foster, that was a great setup for Jamie. We appreciate that.
Awesome. So now let's talk a little about like going from a company that has a national footprint like SunState to TriLift, which is a big company, obviously, but it's I don't know if it's national wide as SunState is. So like what's the main difference between running rental and trucking at TriLift versus being a branch manager, much bigger corporation?
Right. So TriLift is a third generation family company that's based in North and South Carolina, like this faction of it. And Sun State obviously was nationwide. I've worked on both coasts. I worked in LA and I worked in Charlotte. So I mean, that's two different things there. But I'd say the biggest piece that's missing when you come to the smaller company is that there's not as many people in there to fill in the gaps. So you have to widen your approach. So if I want to take care of something, there's not somebody necessarily I can call. I have to go set up the system. I have to get this
Okay.
going. I have to train everybody and get all the pieces in place. Where before, I don't know, you run into a safety thing, I could call a safety manager.
Got it. So
You
it's like
run
wearing more
into
hats.
a fleet problem, there was a fleet manager, right? So yeah, I mean, exactly, Jamie. There, it's all about wearing more hats and expanding your influence, I guess, and your what you have to take care of.
And how do you like it? Like
No.
being more in the execution side of things? Because I mean, I've also talked with a bunch of operators that have worked their way through all the like the rental world from being a salesman all the way to being like the C level of a big company. And most of them tell me like, hey, I don't want to go back to getting my hands dirty and execute, you know, when they're like at a certain level. But here's like the other way around, which I resonate with. Like I want to get my hands dirty and really execute and wear a ton of hats and do a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm a doer.
Nice.
Right at the end of the day, I mean, I like to come up with a vision. I like to do this, but I also like to lead by example. And so I don't know in a gigantic company at that level that currently in my life I'd be the right fit because I would be the guy that would want to get my hands in there and get dirty a little bit and help, you know, dig our way through the trenches.
Nice. Love it.
I completely can relate to that because it's always the fight right now is I'm also that same way. I want to get in there. I want to help the guys, whether they're working on trucks or on a project or going out to different things, and I get told like, hey, you got to stay in the office. We need you working on it and not in it, so to speak. So it's a tough transition. I completely can relate.
Well, you have to know what the right time is because there's a time and a place for everything. And you got to know when to get your hands dirty and when to just coach somebody on their way through.
Yes, exactly. So speaking of coaching somebody on the way through, talking about working on both codes, seeing both things, one thing that's universal is hiring and the pitfalls and the hardships that go through. So what do you think is the hardest part of finding and keeping good people, and how do you do it? Give us the secret sauce.
What is the hardest part these days? I honestly got to tell you, I think it's the internet and the false expectation.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody wants instant gratification. You get hired 2 months later, everybody's looking for a raise. And how do you contain that and explain to somebody, look, I mean, you gotta earn your way through this. This isn't instant gratification. People thinking that they're doing a fantastic job. You have to be willing to give them honest feedback. Right? There's so many people that are afraid of the hard discussions and don't understand how important those really are.
When you hire that person, is there something that stands out that tells you that they're going to be a person that is going to last long term in the business, or something that steps out and you're like, okay, well, that's not going to work?
The things that I'm looking for are self-motivation, somebody that can drive themselves to move forward, somebody that talks about self-development. What are you doing to better yourself? Ownership, taking ownership of a problem, and a team mentality. Because not one of us can do this alone.
Gotcha.
So
Completely. And now I want to talk a little about leadership. I mean, through your career, you've exceeded your sales goals, you've built teams, you've managed budgets, you've done everything. But when it comes to leadership, like what leadership mistake did you make early on when you were starting that still influences on how you lead today?
You know, early on in my leadership journey in the military, I think the biggest thing I forgot to do or didn't do is try and see the world through somebody else's eyes. I was very much results driven. It was get it done, get it done, get it done. And then when you realize that the power of empathy and understanding where somebody's coming from and where their day might have led them, it changes the game. If you like to read Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, I think one of the biggest things there is she talks about is empathy, and then clear is kind about the feedback, right? Just give clear, concise feedback is kind. It's not, honesty is not mean, as
And
long as it's coming from a place of empathy.
I have a question on feedback because some people say that a ton of feedback is good, and some people say that a ton of feedback is not that good. So where are you in between those two extreme points? Like, are you more on like, hey, I'm gonna give you feedback on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, on a monthly basis? How do you manage that in TriLift?
It almost feels like micromanaging at a point, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I am much more of a once a week, let's have a conversation. Right? We
Gotcha.
don't need to talk every day. If you got
Hmm.
something, bring it to me. If a problem arises, I want you to go solve it. If you mess up, we'll coach on that later and figure out what we could have done better. But it's once a week. Let's follow up. Let's see our progress, and let's move on. Come up with a plan. We'll hit it again next week. So currently, I have a meeting set with my rental manager every Friday.
Perfect. And you have a structure
Now,
for that
would
meeting?
you?
Oh, sorry. I just have a question because
No, you're good. Go, go, go.
feedback is something that we're big on in Illicit. And when you're in technology, man, like everything moves so fast that you have to be, when you're on a leadership role, you have to be sort of on top of people, and feedback is very important. So how do you structure those meetings? Is it like a casual, like, hey, let's grab a cup of coffee, or do you have like an agenda for the meeting? How do they work?
Typically, what I'll do is I will send out an email before the meeting of everything we talked about last week and
Hmm.
kind of where I've lined out and what I'm looking for. And then we have that conversation. And then after that meeting, I'll send another email about what the follow up is for that
Gotcha.
so that we can kind of stay on point and continue moving forward every week.
So that nothing slips through the cracks, right?
Right. And then you're not doing the same conversation every week either.
Yeah.
Like you're
Hmm.
moving it along.
Understand. Awesome. Thank you.
No, and I was going to follow up with the same thing. I feel so many times the meetings you have like that tend to become the same, monotonous. So it's trying to figure out how to keep it structured and keep on point. That can be so difficult sometimes for anybody in that lead role. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, I guess looking at the rental operators, when it comes to tracking fleet, managing contracts, and keeping customers happy, I guess where do you see most rental operators, doing well, and where do you see them dropping the ball in terms of that?
I think most rental operators, they're good at answering the phone and pivoting and getting things done. I think where most people drop the ball, and I've tried to be stronger at, is what are you doing with your equipment that's on rent? Are you tracking when that unit is supposed to come off rent? Like what was the original rental contract for? They said 3 months. Are you calling them in between there and checking on that unit? Have you seen if there's another need? Like the more touches you can get in there and the checkups you can do, you're taking care of your customer better and you're giving yourself extra opportunities.
Awesome.
That
Awesome.
extra opportunities part is key. So many people forget that, but yeah, like same thing with long-term rentals of whatever it may be on the party side too. Is you would never think about that, but yeah, keeping up with the customer, they might have it for 2 to 3 months, but they might need something else, like you said. So that's a great point.
Checkup gives you that awesome opportunity, and I think it is important.
Awesome. Awesome. And now that you're talking about that process of the most touches you can have with the customer, that is there any specific challenge you face at TriLift right now that you're doing a bunch of stuff that force you to build a better process like from scratch?
Well, that has been the entire thing since I came to TriLift is trying to get processes in place and ensure that processes that have kind of slipped come back up. So what is that? That is, what does rental ready look like first, right?
Yep.
This is the product that we're going to put out, and we're going to be proud of it. Step number one. And then we got to make sure we know where it is, what its condition is, and if it's ready to rock and roll. Because rental's all about being able to say yes right now. And I want to poise myself and be proactive so that each piece of equipment, I know where it is, why it is, and how it is, so that I can use it on a moment's notice. So what is that? That is fork racks with a fork inventory, so I know where all my different size forks are, where my attachments are, where my forklifts are sitting, what condition they're in, what attachments they currently have attached, what size forks, how many functions they have. If you have all that information right at your fingertips and you don't have to get up to get it, you can execute faster than anybody else.
And execution time is key too, because the customers, anyway they're reading out wants instant gratification, instant results. Somebody to send them back something, and others might not be ready because they're looking into something. But if you have that answer, puts you head above shoulders.
If you have to hang up that phone, that customer is calling somebody else.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's that simple. If I say I have to check on something, that customer is going to pick up the phone and call somebody else. I want to be able to say yes right now.
That's huge. That's huge. So let's look to the future now. Next 12, 24 months, what are you most focused on building or improving at TriLift?
I think it's all about solidifying all the processes, getting everything in place, building upon those, training up the team, and getting everybody hired.
Nice. And what's something right now that you think rental operators need to start paying attention to before it catches them off guard? The ones that are getting into this.
Let's see here. This is a big one to unwrap. So, if there's one thing I think rental operators need to pay attention to, it's people and bench strength. The industry is so heavily fleet technology, utilization. We're looking at all these things, but we don't have enough trained people coming up to take over for the ones that are retiring. And so, what is that? You gotta build bench strength. You got to make sure you're building processes. The second operators need to get ahead of, we got to build that bench strength. We got to properly train people, and we got to give them the opportunity to succeed. We got to.
Awesome. Love it.
Do you think that building bench strength or building up people is probably one of the biggest mistakes that independent rental operators or smaller players aren't doing in regards to otherwise that the bigger guys are doing and succeeding in, and that's how they're moving forward?
I think the biggest thing that the independent guys are doing that the big guys are not, it really is building systems. Your big players are building systems to get things done. They're adopting things like 5S and Kaizen and things that just put pieces in place that make it easier to do the right thing instead of just winging it. I think James Clear said it best. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
Love it. And
I like that.
yeah, definitely do. And okay, last question here, and then we'll go to the end of the show for the lightning round. But if someone's thinking about getting into rental operations as a career today, what would you tell them about what it actually takes to be successful? One piece of advice.
If you're looking for predictable days, you're in the wrong spot. It's a business built on speed, prioritization and problem solving. If you thrive in that environment, then this is where you need to be. I mean, really, it takes somebody that's going to take ownership, build processes, and get in there and get it done. You got to have good communication skills. You got to be able to communicate the task, what needs to happen. You've got to be able to do the handoff and trust your team. You got to have discipline with your data and your processes.
Yep.
It's important. I mean, but most of all, I mean, leadership and team development.
Awesome.
No, that's right. If you can't lead, and you don't have a team that can go out and do it, then you're going to be stuck. So that's exactly right. That's perfect.
If you try and do it all yourself, you will fail. If you think that, like, I try and train myself right out of a job. Like, I want everybody cross-trained. I want everybody to be able to do the job. I want everybody to be confident to make decisions and execute forward. I want them to know that if they fail, it's not going to be something where somebody gets their head chewed off. It's going to be a coaching moment. You did a great job. You made a decision. Now, this is what we could have done better, and let's move on. That empowerment is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch out. If people listen to this, they're going to start sending a lot more resumes your way to work for you, Foster. It sounds great.
Yeah, definitely, man.
The only other thing I would touch on there is that genuine customer empathy. You have to understand that you have somebody's business in your hands, right? That downtime costs them money. If we don't deliver a good product, we're costing that customer money. If you can be the guy that says yes, if you can build that relationship and you can take care of that customer and understand what this means to them, you can thrive.
No, that's perfect. That's not only in the equipment, but the party rental side. That customer, you might rent the same thing a million times to a million different customers, but that customer might only be doing it for one project that they need that is their serious thing. Much as, like, we might rent the same tent a million times, but that customer might need it for their one wedding or their one kid's birthday or whatever it may be. So having that empathy and treating each customer like that rental is special really comes across, and it really helps the situation.
Yeah, and I think that's in every industry. I mean, you guys from the operating side, and for example, us obviously in the software side, because I mean, software at the end of the day becomes like everything for the operators, because you have all your data there. So you need to, like, always give your 110% best support, best service. I mean, our approach, it's a little different. It might sound kind of counterintuitive because obviously I'm the owner of the company. I want the company to grow, right? But the thing is, if you grow to 10,000 customers, it's going to be great. But if you don't have the people to be able to take care of your 10,000 customers, I mean, you're not doing anything. So our approach is more like small pond, big fish, and really pay attention to each of the customers, than like a big pond, small fish where you have 1,000 of them. And then you just pay attention to two that are the ones that pay the most. So we don't agree with that, and we're more on the, small pond, big fish. So I completely agree with you guys.
It's
all right.
Important. It is important.
So we've reached the end of the show, where everybody's favorite time. It's the lightning round. You ready, Foster?
Go for it.
All right. What's the last song you had playing?
Hand Trick by Down and Out.
Okay.
Nice.
Which show are you watching right now?
Landman.
Landman? Haha, it's a lot of people. All right, Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, or McDonald's, and what's your order?
Not normally my thing. If I had to choose one, I guess it would be Taco Bell, and it'd be the crunchy tacos. But I'm much more of a rice and meat guy. I'd rather go for something like a teriyaki madness.
Nice.
That does sound good.
Yep.
All right, what's your favorite rental tool, workflow hack, or trick?
Really, it's got to be the Machine Skate. It's like a tank roller where you can pick up anything and move it around. So, I mean, in my personal life, I've used them to move slate pool tables all by myself, and I think it is amazing and underutilized.
I love
Workflow trick, I gotta say the task list in Outlook is my best friend.
Nice.
Because I can outline everything that I'm thinking about and then mark it off as I go. And that's the first thing I do when I get to the office in the morning is I open up that tab and say, okay, what have I been working on? to just kind of realign my thoughts from the day before, the week before, the month before.
Oh man, I love using a good checklist.
Yeah.
All right, finally, who do you challenge as our next guest?
Okay, I'm gonna. In the beginning of this, we talked about how I got into rental. The guy that got me into rentals' name is Brad Baker, one of my best friends in the
Baker.
entire world, and he runs a company called Toro Rents out of Corona, California.
Yep.
Give him a holler and tell him I sent you. He's a much
Will
more
do.
eloquent speaker than me anyway.
Awesome, awesome. We'll do. We'll reach out to him. So, Foster, this is the end of the show. We really appreciate you being here. This was great, and really appreciate you keeping it real with us, man. You know, talking how it is, no BS, no fluff, just rental. You know, good advice, good best practices to have, and we really appreciate having you here, man.
Yeah, there was awesome takeaways, and I love when we're talking to somebody can take away something ourselves. So you're really given that with the kind of experience you bring. Not only building at Sun State, but then now leading at TriLift. So that's exactly what this show is for. So thanks for being here, man. We really appreciate it.
So I hope to keep
Appreciate
in touch.
it,
You guys have a
Foster.
great one.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Take care.